Page 5. Our godly soul is sourced from a level called Adam, as is written in Bereshis, Vayivra Elokim es ha'adam, and Hashem created man, and mankind would be more accurate because it's referring to both genders, but Salmai, in his image. And remember, we've spoken about this before. How could we say that we're made in the image of God if God does not have an image and a body? What was the answer?
Borrowed her, probably.
Adam HaElyon was the answer. Supernal man. God, as he expresses himself into the world through the 10 Sephiros, how he limits himself and channels himself and reveals himself, is in a certain spiritual form, which is called Adam HaElyon. Our godly soul comes from Adam HaElyon. Okay, which is why it's made in the image. And that's going to be incredibly relevant soon when we talk about...
The Adam HaElyon is the God?
It's Hashem as he reveals himself in a limited way in the spiritual worlds.
Will we see him? Like, when we die, I know that we will see Hashem, but...
We will see the rays of the Shekhinah.
It's not a physical man, it's spiritual.
Right. It's not a man. The reason we call him man is because man is made in the image of that. So it's Hashem as he expresses himself through Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, in the order that it is, with the top and the bottom and the right side and the left side. And man, our godly soul, is made in that very image. Okay, so again, we're talking about the reason why we talk about borrowed terms. The entire Chassidus, the entire Kabbalah is borrowed terms because God is not anything that we know in this world. So we have to borrow terms from what we know to learn about God. If God created the world this way, it's for a reason. What can we learn about God from the world? Or what can we learn about God from the Torah? That's the difference between, I've said this before, Kabbalah and philosophy, Jewish philosophy. Jewish philosophy looks at the world, says God created the world. What can we learn about God from what he created? Kabbalah says God gave us the Torah, his wisdom. What can we learn about God from looking at his Torah?
Also, I learned when I was in my seminary, like a cool idea that like we look at our physical body, like our hands and you know, all our body parts, and like when it says in the Torah, like, oh, Hashem took us out with an outstretched hand, we think like, oh, like our hand, but really like our hand is a metaphor for what a hand really is.
Correct. Right. Like you can even think of a chair. A chair has a certain function, which is to hold up a person. So what's a chair really? It's something that holds up a person. It's like, everyone always uses the cup analogy because teachers always have cups in front of them. Right? Think of like this thing here. What's this green thing?
A cup.
So it's also like a cup, right? But what's this? What's it actually? It's a tzedakah box. What else could it be? It could be a vase. You could put flowers in it, right? So there's the physical thing itself, and then there's the function of the physical thing, which changes the reality of the physical thing in the moment. Now it's a tzedakah box. Tomorrow it could be a vase. Next day it could be a coffee mug, right? It could be a cone to stop people from traffic. So everything physical has a function, and that function is sourced from a spiritual function. Does that make sense? Yeah? So, yes, to what you were saying. It's a very cool idea. And I just listened to a big scientist who was explaining this idea according to science. She doesn't believe in God. So she was explaining it just at the end of the interview. I said, do you believe in God? And she was like, no. I was like, But
I don't understand how they don't. Like, after seeing all those things.
I also don't. I genuinely, especially after listening to this interview, I was very surprised. Like, how can
people usually, when they work with science and everything, they experience God like...
Unfortunately, it's the scientists are generally the most non-believing.
But how? Like, that's...
I mean, I agree, but like,
yeah,
science is its own God. Like it's
that's well put. Science is they believe in science. They believe in science, but she was explaining these breakthroughs about I don't even remember. Like, she was talking about this idea that whatever state you're in the physical moment right now is your reality. And anyway, it was interesting. It was interesting because the whole time I'm like saying, oh, that's Chassid. Oh, that connects to that. Oh, that connects to that. Oh, that connects. And then it's like, oh, do you believe in God? No. It's like, woman, do you know where you have all these ideas from? It's from God. But anyway, that was a side point. I'm getting very distracted. So, Sophie, you need to remind me to stay. Sophie says, yeah, we're going to go inside. So I'm trying to get a little bit inside. Tomorrow, we don't have class. And that means that Thursday we also don't have class. Oh my, okay. So let's do some reading. We are made in the image of God. We are made in the image, actually, of Adam Ha'elyon, of God as he expresses himself in the spiritual world, the supernal man.
Sorry, why didn't we have class tomorrow?
We're doing a
It's Yom HaZikaron.
No.
Yeah. So Uchsiv, as it's written in Yecheskel, remember Yecheskel is the prophet who had the biggest vision of the Merkava. He had a vision of the world of Yetzirah. He describes at length all the throne room, all the goings on around God in that world. And as he says there, what did he see? The al dmus hakisei, and on now notice the word dmus. Dmus means the likeness. On the likeness of the throne, okay, so God has something called a kisei hakavod. He sits on the throne, and remember, it's not a physical throne. That's why it says v'al dmus hakisei, on something that are going to describe physically as a throne where God's presence sits. What was on top of that? Dmus kamar'e Adam. There was a likeness of the appearance of Adam, of man.
But is it Adam or Adam Harishon?
No, Adam Harishon is made in the image of Adam Ha'elyon. Adam Harishon is the first mankind, and Adam and Chava fall into this category, and they're made in the image of this Dmus kamar'e Adam. And the Alter Rebbe is saying that our godly soul comes from this place, from Adam Ha'elyon. This is going to be very important because we're going to talk about how God communicates with both souls, and we're going to talk about an arousal and inspiration that can come from on high and the impact that has on us. And it's going to be very relevant because our godly soul is made in the image of God in the spiritual worlds of Adam Ha'elyon. They can communicate with each other. They have a common language. They're made in the same structure, and therefore they can, right? Just like we can communicate because we have the same language. Adam Ha'elyon and our godly soul, which is sourced from that, which makes us human, right? Which is what we call Adam. They can communicate with each other. Now I'm jumping ahead of myself, but that's why it's relevant. So I don't want us to get stuck on now the Adam Ha'elyon and how does the godly soul go from being there to here. But that's what it's saying here. So v'hishtalshelos shela, the soul's descent lamata, down here into this physical world, into this physical body, hu al yedei bechinas panei Adam, is through the level which is called the face of man, shepa merkava, which is on the merkava. This is a certain level of incredibly lofty angel, okay, which is called panei Adam, the face of man. Did it actually have a face of man? No, but that's the closest that Yecheskel could describe it as in physical terms.
The angel's called
Panei Adam. So there's a merkava, there's a chariot that's holding up God's kisei hakavod. On the kisei hakavod is something called Adam Ha'elyon. That's God's presence in that world. Holding up the kisei hakavod, there's 4 sides. There's the Pnei Shor, Pnei Aryeh, Pnei Nesher, Pnei Adam. The face of man. Excuse my rough nose. The face of a lion, the face of an eagle, and the face of an ox. Okay, and how does our soul go from being Adam Ha'elyon, God's presence in the upper worlds, to coming down into our body? Because it's channeled through this angel called Pnei Adam. Okay, this is big Kabbalah stuff, which we're not going to get into, mainly because I don't know it. No, because
how can we learn it? We're not supposed to.
There are opinions that you shouldn't get too into the Merkava, specifically the whole story of the Merkava, because it's using such humanistic terms for such spiritual things. If you're not holding there yourself, if you're not spiritually in tune with that, you can start to think of God and the angels as images, right? As things that we can actually understand, which we can't. You can understand a lot more than I understand it, that's for sure. But there's a limit to how much we can understand what Yecheskel saw in the world of Yetzirah, what Yeshaya saw in the world of Bria.
Is it talked about in the Zohar?
Yes. Yes.
We can't learn Zohar, right?
We do. Chassidus is full of Zohar.
Because I heard that we can learn, men can learn after the age of 40.
Right. That was yes. There's an idea that I don't know, man, woman from the age of 40 can learn it, but
also they need to have
the Arizal pretty much, I think, began the change in that, in making Kabbalah more, and Chassidus changed it a lot, because Chassidus explains Kabbalah in a way, that's not what Chassidus' only role is, but that's one of the things that it does, in a way that somebody under 40 can understand as well. So there are opinions that say that absolutely, that Kabbalah...
It says that it's just for men?
I don't know if it says just for men, but for those over 40, I think it just used to be that women weren't learning these kind of texts at all, right? So when it's saying a man over 40, but the idea is that yes, there was it says in Pirkei Avos that different ages have different things, and that the different experiences you get at different ages, and that 40 is the age of wisdom, of understanding. So that's the source of that. And Kabbalah in general was something that people were told that Yechezkel is not Kabbalah. Yechezkel is a prophet from the prophets from Tanakh, but falls into that realm of describing God spiritually in humanistic terms. People were told to stay away from it because they didn't have the tools to be able to differentiate. These are borrowed terms for something we cannot actually describe. It takes a certain ability to do that. Chassidus has given us that, has packaged that for us, that even if we don't have that ability, we're not 40, we're not holding this spiritually, we can learn those things. So the descent of the godly soul is through the Pnei Adam of the Merkava. Okay? Where does the animal soul come from? We'll end with this today. The Nefesh Bahamit, what's the source of the animal soul? Spiritually, he nilkacha mishmarei ha'aifanim. It is taken from the, shmari literally means the waste, the dregs, some places it's described as the feces of the Aifanim, which is the lowest level of angel. The sharsha, but its source up on very, very high, is mebechinas pnei shar, from the face of the ox. So, okay, again, very quickly, I'm going to just for a visual, for those who are visual thinkers more. Yeah. Okay, let's try to do this. Please don't take a picture of it though. Okay. So we've got, this is terrible, I don't even know if I should be drawing a picture of the Merkava, but we've got the Kisei HaKavod, and we've got Adam HaElyon on top of the Kisei.
I thought the Adam HaElyon was one of the...
And then there's the Pnei Adam.
No.
Yeah, so holding it up on four sides is the face of an ox, which is where the animal soul comes from, the face of the eagle, face of the lion, and there are places that say that certain aspects come from there too, but we won't get into that. Face of lion. We're told exactly where each one is, I don't remember though, like front, back, right, left, face of lion, face of eagle. I do remember learning a minor that described different aspects of the animal soul, comparing it to also the lion and the eagle. And then the face of man, okay? So our godly soul goes from Adam HaElyon through face of man down to the neshama.
Can you just say it in Hebrew really quick?
Pnei shar, Pnei aryeh, Pnei nesher, and Pnei adam. So the godly soul goes straight from being like one with God to being channeled through Adam HaElyon, coming down through this incredibly lofty angel. This is the highest angel. This is the most lofty. It's the one that has the face of man, down into the soul. The animal soul goes from the face of the ox, down through all the levels, okay, of angels, down to the lowest level of angel. The Aifanim are the lowest level of angel. Aifanim means a wheel, and I just talked about them yesterday, but Aifanim means a wheel. They're chaotic angels. They understand God the least, and so they're just very emotional, which again, we talked about the characteristics of the animal soul, right? Very emotional, loud, and chaotic. And the animal soul is channeled not only through those angels, but through the waste of those angels, like the klipa that comes from those angels, the outer external layer, which is called shomrei afanim. And again, like this is not essential for us to Shomrei Efanim, the waist of the angels, and down into the animal soul. What's the point here? The animal soul goes through many, many, many contractions and levels, descent after descent after descent, before coming into our experience. Which is why that it starts off, the face of the ox is talking about the highest levels of angels are the angels of the Merkava. Creations that are so in tune and in line with God that it's beyond belief. Okay? But that source, then the animal soul then goes down, 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 very, very far away from its source. Down and channeled through much lower levels of angels, and then down into our experience, which is why even though the source of our animal soul knows God to be the truth, is constantly in connection with God, directs all of its passion, right? Oxes are passionate, directs all of its passion towards God. As it descended down the order of descent into our body and experience, it lost sight of that. So it has the personality still of the ox, but it's not directed toward God, it's directed towards itself. And therefore it's in a state of fear, anxiety, worry, distraction, selfishness, short-sightedness, and all the other things that we said. Okay? And this is going to be very relevant because the Alter Rebbe is going to say that it's important to know where the animal soul comes from so that we can know how to redirect it towards Hashem. Just like, very often, again, going back to therapy, sometimes you need to know, go back to your childhood, right? I know maybe that's controversial, but go back to figure out where you come from so that you can know how to move forward, right? So too, in order to know how to constructively work with the animal soul, which is the question of this moment, how can the two incredibly distinct souls who are two different personalities work together? The answer is going to be, we need to first know where our souls come from. And we need to know where the animal soul comes from. Because you can, let's say a husband and wife go to couples therapy, and the wife says, okay, this guy is nuts. He rages, he doesn't know how to control his temper, Okay, now not abusive or anything, but okay, he's really, and then the therapist starts to sit down and explain and look at the child and say, when he was this and this age, this and this happened, and this was his response, this was it. Suddenly you can start to work with the person, right? If you just look at the person and you say, this person just rages, it's like, there's nothing to work with. Say, this is where that rage comes from. This is what happened. This is what led to this. This is a coping mechanism. It's like, okay, now we can figure out how to move forward, how to work with that rage, how to work with that person instead of just cutting it off. We can't cut off our animal soul, even though it rages and it's all the other things, right? It's got all of these tendencies that we do not like. We can't just cut that off. And so what's the solution, the Alter Rebbe says? To get to know it, as we're going to see, but before even getting to know it, to understand where does it come from? And how did it end up, even it started so lofty, in an incredibly passionate state, spiritual state, in love with God, how did it end up all the way down here? It's like, because it went through all these stages, and in that descent, it lost sight of what it was passionate about, and therefore it got lost in translation. Now, we just experienced the rage. We don't know where it came. We just experienced this overwhelming, blinding passion. But we have to remember that overwhelming, blinding passion started out as a passion for God. Okay, so we'll end off with that. That's where the Alter Rebbe is going here with talking about the source of each of the souls. We're going to leave behind now the Merkava, okay? So hopefully we got what we need to get from it. I'm going to look into the Nefesh HaSichlis. What we're going to talk about next week, please God, is how do we have these two souls communicate and work constructively together if they're so incredibly different and they come from two different places. Okay? They're practicing. They're practicing for tomorrow or Thursday.
But I thought I saw it was canceled.
No. Never.
I didn't see that.
They're gonna do it on Yom Ha'atzmaut.
Well, they're practicing for it for sure. That's not it's not a work. Okay. I remember I remember 2 years ago when they had the air show, looking at it being like, imagine that was like real and we were in a war. I don't remember just thinking, I said it to my friend, like, it's so scary. It's such a scary noise.
The war?
They don't do that.
And I remember also saying, imagine that was an enemy's plane flying over you, which probably in Ukraine or things. It's not scary?
It is.
No, that's what I'm saying. Why would you say that?
Right, that's true. Why would I say that?
They wait
Right,
for
go
this
over that.
show
That's what they
every
hear.
year.
It's like a little.
I know that's why I saw something. I also saw that like it's canceled.
No, but
I guess
are
not.
you in the Yerushalayim group? They said that they will practice the whole week for Yom Hashemot, so that means that like.
Yeah, it sounds like that's what.
No, definitely. It's for sure going on now. But I
But
guess,
yeah, it's a great, it's
It's
plain
beautiful.
thing.